Hello, all, and welcome to the latest episode of the Horror Countdown podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and with me tonight is filmmaker Tim O'Leary.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, welcome aboard.
Well, thank
So,
you.
all right. So, for tonight, we figured this would be a special Pride Month celebration episode for the first month of June. We're going to be discussing our favorite post-2000 LGBTQ plus genre films. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I figure this is a perfect time to celebrate the occasion and get our footing out and honor something that is more than worthy and deserving of praise.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, agree
s-
wholeheartedly.
yeah. I've always I wouldn't say that I am a member, but I've
Mhm.
always aligned with the movement, and I've always been a fan of their content. To me, it was always just a horror film.
Yeah,
So yeah, that
totally.
yeah, that was just always how I approached it. I never really made much of a distinction until I noticed that there was movements to, you know, spearhead this a little bit more vocally and a little bit more, forcefully, so to speak. But it was an easy movement to, find myself aligned with. So I figured this would be an easy one to, get our list together and kind of talk about. But in occasion for your end of the bargain, what was the choice for doing it now? And I
Uh,
mean, I assume the month is a big part of it, but what was the impetus for doing this? And you want to talk about any part of the selection process or anything like that?
sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I love a gimmick. So if there's a theme to a month, I'm all in. And I am a member of the LGBTQIA community. I'm the most boring version of it, which is a cisgender gay man, and it doesn't get less interesting than that. But growing up, being a gay person, but also being a huge horror fan, left, I think probably a lot of guys my age and older, a little bit like feeling like they didn't really belong in either camp, because horror was not necessarily an enormous, at least not an openly enormous part of the gay community, and then also queerness was definitely not a big part of horror. But what's sort of come to light, with the wonderful thing about the birth of the internet, is that it gave everybody a sort of connection to any kind of communities that they could hope for. And I think this was certainly my experience, and I imagine this was probably true for a lot of other gay horror fans as well, is that we learned just how many LGBTQIA horror fans there are. And I can tell you personally, as a horror filmmaker, one of the things that really uh, that I wasn't expecting necessarily, and I was very happy to have my eyes opened about this when I was crowdfunding for my series Demon Hunter, is that the horror fandom at large tends to be very welcoming of people that are traditionally othered. And I think that's something that's really beautiful and is not actually talked about a lot. But the horror fandom, the horror community, is really embracing of people that are not necessarily like them. Like, it was one thing I remember, I was talking to this guy who was a straight horror fan, and he had just watched Hellbent, which we're both going to talk about, which is the 2004 2005 gay
Oh
slasher
yeah,
film. And
oh
he
yeah.
said that, like, he really enjoyed it because like he just loved. Oh, I forgot to ask, am I allowed to curse or no?
I can slap an explicit label on this. It's not an issue.
Oh, okay.
I work PG, but the format offers an explicit label, so go for it.
Okay. Here's the deal, man. I usually get an explicit label tacked against my name whenever I do anything. I'm
Well,
gonna I'm gonna try to not swear. We'll see how I go. But anyway, he loves slasher movies. So when he saw Hellbent, the gay aspect of it didn't bother him. He was just excited to see any kind of slasher that was even remotely well done. And I think he was probably representative of a lot of people in the horror community, where they just want a movie that's scary. That's it. And a good scary movie is a good scary movie, no matter where it sort of falls in terms of representation. So yeah, in my very roundabout way, I hope I answered your question.
yeah. I mean, I was kind of similar like that. I mean, you know, I had seen a couple. I mean, I had probably stumbled across a few David Dakota films.
Oh God. Okay.
None of those made my list in any format, but I had seen a couple of them. I
Uh-huh.
believe the Brotherhood films had come out before,
Yeah.
and
Oh, the Brotherhood films. Yep.
yeah,
Hmm.
there was maybe like one or two that I had seen. The names escape me because it's been so long and they weren't that good to begin with.
No, no, they
Yeah,
were not. Yeah, but you know,
but
I one of
yeah,
the
that was
mhm.
I was gonna say is that was kind of like the first inclination that there was something other than like the mainstream kind of red-blooded American male kind of genre films.
Yes,
But
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
after like I said, I mean Hellbent is on my list, so it's not
Mhm.
really going to be much of a spoiler. But yeah, well, that one was kind of like the main one that kind of alerted me to there being more out there than just the regular stuff that would appeal to straight men like me. So
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, Hellbent is a pretty prominent name, and it's one that it has point of pride on my list. I've talked about it on another show where we discussed our favorite in general, which is kind of I was gonna say like the reason why we're doing post 2000 is that I've already done the genre in general,
Mhm,
so I've
mhm.
covered like the entire spectrum. That was episode 10. For those that are curious about looking at the genre as a whole.
I'm
So
sure Friday the 13th Part 2 was mentioned in
actually, no.
Get out of, are you serious?
Friday 2 was not. Nightmare 2 was.
Wow.
I think
Oh
that's where
wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
Nightmare 2,
meant
yeah.
Nightmare. So, did I say Friday the 13th Part
Yeah, you
2?
said Friday 2,
Oh
yeah.
my God. I just lost all of my horror bona fides with that one Freudian
Yeah.
slip. Sorry,
No
everybody.
worries.
I meant Nightmare 2.
That's what I was trying to correct. That's what I was trying to correct you. Yeah, Nightmare 2 came up.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nightmare 2 came up. We discussed a little of the early stuff like the Dracula's Daughter came up.
Hmm,
A
hmm.
couple of the
Sleepaway
les
Camp.
yeah, Sleepaway Camp, a couple of
Hmm.
the early lesbian vampire films,
Oh yeah, The
Hunger,
Hunger. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that kind of
Uh,
stuff.
what
So
about where do you fall on Rocky Horror Picture Show? Do you accept that as an actual horror movie, or is it just too silly for that?
so the funny thing on my list was that me and our guest both had it actually the exact same spot for the exact same reason.
That's funny. What was the reason and what was the spot?
We both had it at number 4,
Okay.
and we both had it because it aligned itself so closely to the genre, even though it kind of falls outside the scope of it. But
Right.
it's so closely associated with the genre that it's sort of just become like an adopted child, so to speak.
I love
That
that.
it was kind of like the genre was like the genre fans were like the first ones to like embrace it and take it up in arms and like proclaim it for what it is,
Sure.
even though it doesn't necessarily fall in line with a lot of it. It uses genre tropes and imagery and allegory and stuff like that, but it doesn't necessarily fit in. So we
Hmm.
both kind of said, it's worthy of being nominated and is worthy of being mentioned, but it's not like our number one.
Yeah, I would say that it definitely wears the costume of a horror movie without actually ever being a horror movie.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
how we both fell on that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, we both had it at number 4, and that was kind of like the funny thing about that conversation. But
That's funny.
yeah, episode 10 is the episode where we discussed queer LGBTQ plus genre films as a whole. So
Hmm.
that was kind of the impetus for doing post 2000 with you, with honoring a little bit more recent stuff, because there was a couple of films that I had seen since that conversation, just
Hmm.
on my own accord. So that kind of just further spurred what this episode is going to be. So
Nice.
um, yeah. So
Yeah.
if we're ready and we're ready to get started, let's start in on our lists.
Awesome. I'm all in.
So yeah, my number 10. So I'll get this going. My
Yeah.
number 10. I kind of discovered this one kind of recently. Um, I initially, when we came together and we discussed this, we had kind of talked back and forth about what kind of films we were going to put on our list, and this one wasn't mentioned because I had kind of discovered it recently, as I was going through a bunch of lists trying to find like honorable mentions, just to like see if there was something else that had just kind of slipped through the cracks, and seeing if there was something else that I had missed. I came across this one, and I went with 2020 Spiral.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Yeah, so this is not, the book from the Book of Saw. This is not, one of the, you know, numerous other films that have kind of popped up. It's, a pretty generic title, but it's a Canadian film. I think it's probably would align itself more with like a cult film just based on the finale. But real briefly here, it's a same-sex couple that moves with their daughter to a small town out in the countryside, and neighbors seem a little friendly. They're not necessarily sure how to deal with them. Accepting, but kind of keeping them with at odds until they start to realize that there's strange incidences and behaviors, and things just aren't as friendly as they initially appear to be, and it kind of goes from there. Like I said, I'm trying not to be too spoiler free if you haven't
Hmm.
seen it, but
Right.
yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. It kind of deals with a lot more than what you would think it would be based on the premise. There's a lot of it did deals with paranoia and mental illness, but it also deals kind of like interracial marriage, and the fact that it's a black guy and a white guy together, and they're raising a teenage daughter. One of them had a daughter when they were straight, and they have custody of them now. So it
Hmm.
kind of deals with those kind of issues, but then it starts dealing with the horror aspect, and not necessarily the greatest stuff. I mean, there's a few kind of scenes here and there just to like get the ball rolling and give like an eerie atmosphere, but it kind of like goes full out at the ends, although it just at that point feels like a little too late kind of. So it kind of fell on my list a little bit because of that, just because it
Hmm.
doesn't it deals with the issues more than it does deal with the horror aspects, so it kind of
Yes.
fell on my list a little, but
Agreed.
it's still good enough that I enjoyed my time with it. So if you can find it, I believe it's still on Shutter.
I think it was a Shutter original, so it
Original or
probably
exclusive?
or
Yeah,
exclusive, maybe. Yeah, yeah.
original exclusive. I get those two mixed up because they use them so interchangeably.
Oh, because just because I have a stuff in distribution, I know the difference.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Big difference there. Usually
yeah.
just in terms of the paycheck that goes to the people that made it. So,
Ah, okay.
yeah. Not to be too inside baseball, but yeah,
Oh,
that's
but
the difference there. Yeah.
cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, worth a watch if you can find it. You know, be sure it's the one from 2020, because like I said, generic title. But my number 10 is Spiral.
I do, I will say I saw it and I did enjoy it. And oh God, now I'm blanking. Wait, hold on, give me 1 second. I'm gonna remember the name. Jeffrey Boyer Chapman, who plays the lead,
Mm,
is just one of the hottest guys I think I've
yeah.
ever seen. So it was very enjoyable to just watch him kind of navigate. And before I saw him on what was the spoof of the reality show of Making the Bachelor? Is it Unreal? I think that was it. So,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I believe so. I get a lot of the straight
those
ones confused with the spoof ones.
with the spoof ones. Yeah, exactly. But I
Yeah,
think he was
I
on
believe.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the Bachelor one is Unreal, if my memory serves
I
me.
think I think that's the one. Yeah, but oh God, yeah, he's just he's a very very good looking dude, and he is on RuPaul's Drag Race quite a bit, and was actually a host on the Canadian one. But
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah.
I am not that familiar with the Canadian one. I've seen bits and pieces of the American one, just being around a lot of friends that like it. But
Well, now it's like ESPN, so there's Drag
yeah,
Race Spain and Drag Race UK and Drag Race Diamond now.
okay,
So,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
I know that there's like I said, I know there's a few around the world, but I'm not that familiar with those. So
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
if it's the Canadian version, I'll take your word for it.
Okay, so my turn, right?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
number 10.
All right, so number 10, I have a film called What Keeps You Alive. And it, from what I understand, was originally written to be a straight couple and then at some point changed to a lesbian couple. But it's a great film. It's very taut and it's very small. So I think there's only four characters in the entire movie, two of whom are only on screen for, a few minutes. But it's a really tense thriller about a lesbian couple, and they go to the cabin that by a lake that one of them owns. And so our hero, Jules, and her wife Jackie go to this cabin. They're hanging out. Jules is a very kind of tomboyish, almost sort of androgynous woman, and her wife Jackie is very beautiful and glamorous, long blonde hair. And we learn pretty quickly that Julie, or sorry, not Julie, Jackie is in fact a violent murderous psychopath who marries women and then kills them. So kind of a Black Widow of the lesbian variety. And the majority of the movie is really mostly a cat and mouse game where Jules is, she attempts to avoid being killed. There's a lot of chase scenes. There's a lot of scenes where they're running through woods. There's psychological manipulation. One of the things I really liked about it was that the hero is Jules, who is the more androgynous of the two, and then the very feminine presenting one is the psycho killer. And I think in lesser hands, those two would have been switched. It kind of plays with our expectation of gender presentation. And yeah, and it's just a fun, low budget thriller with a lot of murder in it. So I think you can get that on Shudder. If not, you could probably get that somewhere on Amazon, surely. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my number 10.
Nice. I saw that on a couple of lists and I tried to get to it. It was I think I had it right up after Spiral because I think it is on Shudder.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was right after Spiral, but I didn't have time to finish it. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely intrigued because it popped up quite frequently. So it was one of those that I wanted to get to, but just couldn't, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll move on to my number 9. This one, I'm still not entirely sure where I fall on this one because I lean back and forth on it, and I go, sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it, but I still felt that it deserved a place on my list. I went with 2009's Jennifer's Body.
Yeah. Awesome. That's on my list too.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I go back and forth on this one. I'm not really, interested in detailing this one as much as I did Spiral because I think it's a little
Mhm.
bit more popular. But what I really like about it is also the part that I really kind of hate about it is I go back and forth on their friendship so
Mhm.
often that I don't really have like a firm standing on where I am with the two of them.
Okay.
Uh, there's points where they feel genuine and they come off like a genuine couple, and I mean the obvious sexual tension between them kind of you know plays a major factor in that. But then there's also points where they just look too old to be high school teenagers, and
Yeah.
it just makes them look so weird, spotting off that hip dialogue and that's the slang talk and the abbreviations and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
They just look a little too old to be doing those kinds of roles. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
just because I'm more familiar with how they are now, that
Hmm.
I'm projecting onto them now rather than how they are then. But it it, it just really affects me, and I go back and forth between liking it and loving it for that reason.
Hmm.
But I think because a lot of it is, the film centers around the two of them to the point where, they're the stars on screen 95% of the time. The entire film, reads like, her going through all this massacre, just trying to win her over and, like get her on her side. And, it plays like, this kind of like odd seduction kind of, you
Hmm.
know,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, it plays like this odd kind of like, seduction attempt, like mating dance kind
Right.
of.
Hmm.
So yeah, it, kind of like normalizing like a same-sex kind of a relationship in this kind of a sense, even though it's doing it where one of them is a legitimate monster, figuratively and literally.
Hmm.
It's still fun, it's still good. Like I said, I still have points where I really like it, and there's still a lot to enjoy here, but because I go back and forth on it so often, I kind of dropped it a little bit lower on my list. But yeah, overall, my number 9 is Jennifer's Body.
Fair enough. Now I should probably hold off on my comments on it, right, until we get
Yeah,
to it on my list.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you said you had it on your list, so that's
I
good
do.
enough. But yeah, you want to bring it up on your slot, you're free to do
Sure.
so.
I'm probably just so you know, I'm warning you ahead of time. I am probably at some point going to try to do an impersonation of Amanda Seyfried doing an impersonation of Elizabeth Holmes, where she drops her voice really low. Because I'm not sure if you've seen The Dropout on Hulu, but I can't stop watching it. I can't
No.
stop watching her do this like crazy psychopath voice. Anyway, all right. So my number nine. Funny you should bring up David Dakota earlier. This is not a David Dakota film, but it's kind of the larger budget spiritual successor of a David Dakota film. So it's called The Covenant, and it came out in 2006, I want to say. Um, and I'll never forget the first time I heard of this movie. I was hanging out with a bunch of my gay male friends in Albany, New York, where I was living at the time, and like we were watching something, and then a commercial for The Covenant came on, and everybody stopped talking, and we were all watching this commercial in silence because we were like, "Wait, is this about boy witches? This is amazing." But the movie itself is. What it is. It is a film that came out, and I'll merely say one of the fun parts about the plot is that it shows like boy witches are kind of just as petty and bitchy, if not pettier and bitchier than their female counterparts. Um, but its claim to fame, I think, is that it has really early performances from Sebastian Stan and Taylor Kitsch and Chase Crawford. I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember a huge amount of the plot because the movie was what it was. But the fact that it exists is amazing. It's kind of like a so bad it's good kind of film, and certainly more homoerotic than explicitly queer. But if you want to watch something that reeks of 2000s energy and is fun and you can just sort of watch it, leave in the background, highly recommend The Covenant.
Yeah, I saw it a couple of times.
Mhm.
I enjoy it, but I'm not like really that high on it, so it's kind of weird. I've seen it a few times. I usually just watch it more in a, I'm in the mood for like, a 90 minute, 90 style kind of like, teen
Mhm.
PG-13, genre effort, because it feels
Yes.
very much like one of those kinds of, films that would have come out, like around the Scream era, just, not
Hmm.
without the, meta-ness or anything.
Right,
But yeah,
exactly.
it feels very much like that kind of like, mainstream kind of genre fare. But
Yeah. I think the most disappointing thing of the whole movie was that like everything gets set up for this climax where Sebastian Stan and the protagonists are just gonna throw down magically and just try to, kill each other in this big magic fight. And kind of all they do is like throw energy balls at each other. Like you kind of think like
yeah,
if they're witches, they could get really inventive with how these two guys would fight. But it kind of leaves a little to be desired there. But
yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, my number eight, this one a bit of a cheat, but
Okay.
I kind of decided to lump them together. This is the Fear Street trilogy.
Ah, yes, also on my list.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hmm.
So I kind of think I put them on the list because one, the entire film, the entire series is basically a same-sex kind of reconciliation project, because all of the films lead up to the one girl trying to win her girlfriend back, or not necessarily win her back, but like get back together by getting rid of this curse that's possessed her.
Hmm.
And dealing with this three-part series that got a lot of national attention in the genre fair, because it was this big priority project on Netflix, kind of I think like solidified the idea kind of really really easily. All of
Hmm.
the films they're dealing, they all have their closet kind of queer storylines. The first film is basically the two of them getting to get setting up their relationship, and setting the trying to come up with the proper term, but like
Okay.
unpossession,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
trying to
Hmm.
like get rid of her, the possession. The second one kind of details the events back in the old, the some at the summer camp.
Right, the 70s, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the closet witches in the 1666 section. But
Hmm.
the fact that all three of them kind of came together and were centered around the storyline and the setup I really enjoyed it, and I do enjoy all three films to an extent.
Mhm.
I go back and forth between one and two being my favorites, and then three is just a slight step back. So
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
yeah, three I still enjoy. I have a lot of fun with, but I kind of was a little disappointed that it set itself up as 1666, like, it spends the least amount of time in
Mhm.
1666, so that was
Yeah.
kind of the disappointing thing.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Agreed.
part one, the entire project is 1994. I mean, that makes sense because it's setting the storyline up.
Right.
But, two being 78, 98% of it is set in 78. And then, the third one, 66, like half the movie is set there. So it, just feels a little weird to, it be the big end all kind of setup, but it
Hmm.
spends the least amount of time in its chosen year. So
True. True.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I still enjoy all three. I had a lot of fun with each of them. I definitely can see why some would, favor one over the other because I do enjoy all three. But um, to feature like this big, trilogy, multi-arcing storyline centers around this, couple fighting to stay together.
Hmm.
Yeah, that kind of, it deserves a spot on my list for that reason. So like
Yeah.
I said, a bit of a cheat to put them together, but my number eight is the Fear Street trilogy.
I mean, I did the same cheat, so we're good. Were you
Okay.
an R.L. Stein kid?
I kind of grew up just after he came out.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I was already in middle school when the first book was released.
Okay.
So
Because
I just missed him. I saw a lot of my friends reading it, but I was just outside of the age range to be tempted to do it.
I well, I think so. I'm a little older than you. I think I was in school, like in grade school when kids were reading them, but I was such a wimp that I was scared by the covers of the books, so I didn't read them. I was too
Oh yeah.
scared. Yeah. All right, so my number eight is Seed of Chucky. And so I just have to put this out there as a disclaimer in the very beginning. It goes without saying, and this is the law, by the way, I didn't make this up, that Jennifer Tilly's presence in any film she's in automatically makes it an iconic work of queer fiction. She's just incredible. She's amazing in everything. She is a queer icon. Um, and she gets to play two roles in this movie, which is really fun. So the plot revolves around Chucky and Tiffany, who in the previous movie, Bride of Chucky, it's revealed that she was his love interest and then she transfers her soul into a doll. Anyway, they have a son named Glenn who turns out to be actually genderqueer and is both a boy named Glenn and a girl named Glenda. And it's a little rocky in terms of being like actual legit trans representation, but I'm gonna say for early 2000s, it's pretty good. Glenn slash Glenda is never really uh, shoot, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this without cursing. He's never the real recipient, or I should say, they are never really the recipient of too much ire for their gender fluidity, which is really cool for 2004. The plot is very silly. The kills are really, really fun. Like I said, Jennifer Tilly plays Tiffany, but she also plays a fictionalized version of herself, which is incredible. And I know that some people in the Child's Play fandom prefer the darker Chucky films and really don't like Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky for being too light and funny and kind of making fun of the series maybe more than owning up to the darkness of it. But I actually really love them. And also honorable mention is that in the new Chucky TV series, the lead is a gay teenager. So, Don Mancini is really, he's out there for the community for sure. And so
Nice.
yeah, that's my number eight.
Nice. Yeah. I when I first saw it, I really liked it as well. I thought there was a lot of fun with it. Because I had actually seen well, the first one I'd seen was Bride, so that was my introduction to the
That was
series.
your first Child's Play movie?
Well, actually, Bride was
Oh,
well. Funny story is that Bride is actually like the first legitimate horror film I watched that I actually liked.
really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Okay,
yeah,
so
that
you
well,
were really
that's
introduced to like horror comedy as the sort of
Well, the thing is
template.
that I didn't watch it because it was a comedy. I watched it because the trailer made it look good.
Fair enough.
So I remember. So yeah, I wasn't really like a huge genre fan growing up, but I
Okay.
saw the trailer and I was like, oh man, I gotta watch this.
Hmm.
And so I saw it when it came to cable TV.
Hmm.
So the Bright is like I've always credited Bright as being the first one. I had seen a couple. I had seen like Deep Rising,
Okay.
Jaws,
Sure, sure, sure.
Alien, but there wasn't really stuff that at the time I considered horror, even though I do now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I always said Bride was the first legitimate horror film I watched. And then after that you see Texas Chainsaw, Halloween, Friday, and then it's kind of like, okay, well,
All the classics.
yeah, it
Yeah.
gets the ball rolling and it kind of like, gets you into it. But
See,
yeah,
mine was Scream. So
uh,
like the first movie I saw was an homage to all these other movies. So it was
uh,
kind of an interesting like
yeah,
intro. Yeah,
that was kind of how I was because I realized that there was a lot of like little in jokes that I didn't get.
exactly. That's how I was with Scream too.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I still really enjoyed Bright a lot. So to bring it to Seed, I'd seen Seed first before I'd seen the other, so I was kind of not into it because of that, but I'd seen that first, so I was kind of like aware that it was kind of jokey. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
liked Seed because of that, but then I kind of soured a little just because others had started pointing out flaws, and it's like, why do they do this and why do they do that, and like all this other like issues with the storyline and motivations and stuff like that. So it kind of soured me just slightly, but not enough to like really hate the film. I'm not like
Hmm.
a hater of the film. I just kind of find it like like average. It's one that I really only watch if I'm like binging the franchise.
Sure, sure, sure. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
Moving on to my number 7, I went with 2005's Cursed.
Oh, cursed.
So yeah, cheesy to the max. Not necessarily the most amazing werewolf film ever, but I kind of have this on my list for one main reason, and that is the fact that one of the characters in the film, he's a bully who bullies Jesse Eisenberg's character for being gay,
Hmm.
and it turns out he himself is actually gay.
Hmm.
It's a reveal that comes across throughout the course of the film, but the main thing that I appreciate about the film is he is allowed to come to the realization that he is gay and he's not punished for it.
Right.
So he's not punished for being a bully. He's allowed to come to the realization about himself and discover his true self, living his true self, so to speak. And
Hmm.
he's not punished for it. So he's allowed to live life and carry on, knowing that he's now able to be his true self. So
Right.
yeah, it's like I said, it's a small part of the storyline. It's incidental characters, but the fact that this is one of the first mainstream films that kind of put that idea out there, and it didn't punish the bully for bullying the bu- bullying his target. It allowed him to see
Hmm.
the error of his ways and repent and sort of come to terms with who he was. It just so happened to be a gay character that was bullying another for being gay.
Right.
I really think that deserves a lot of mention and a lot of praise for doing that.
And then I think of the first scene when he was like scaring Jesse Eisenberg away with his dog and he shouted, "And I think your dog's gay too," which is my
Yeah.
favorite line in the whole movie. But I also
Oh
love
yeah.
that because like at the end, it's sort of like Jesse Eisenberg and Milo Ventimiglia reconcile, and Milo Ventimiglia played the bully. And then like Milo Ventimiglia's girlfriend becomes Jesse Eisenberg's girlfriend throughout the course of the film. And then the three of them sort of walk off into the sunset together, which I
Mhm.
can only assume they're going to have a three-way. That's my only reading of the movie.
Yeah, that's a version that I probably would have wanted to watch. But
Exactly.
yeah. Um, all right. Yeah. So
Oh yeah.
with that, let's get your number 7.
Okay, so my number 7 is the preeminent gay slasher, the elder statesman of gay slashers, 2004's Hellbent. Um, this was a great movie for any slasher fan, but particularly for gay people who had always kind of envisioned themselves in a slasher movie plot but never got to see themselves on screen, here we go. This one's for us. So it starts with a traditional slasher cold open where characters who are kind of unrelated to the main plot get murdered by the movie's killer. But the twist in this one is it's two guys having sex in a car, and then one of them gets beheaded because, you know, you always got to have a little decapitation to get the ball rolling. Anyway, we then cut to Eddie, a cute gay dude who works in the police station but is not a cop. He and his group of gay male friends, well, one of them is bi, which the movie kind of presents as really shocking and alternative, even though by today's standards, that's not remotely, controversial. But anyway, so we'll say queer friends. They descend on West Hollywood for the annual Halloween parade party. Now, I just got to say, I live in West Hollywood. I've been to the Halloween parade. It's nothing like it appears on film. And they also park in what looks uh, like a wooded reservation area and then walk to West Hollywood parade, which is impossible. I'm calling BS on that one. But anyway, they're at the parade, and soon enough, the masked killer from the opening shows up, starts collecting their heads in a trick-or-treating bag. And then Eddie, the protagonist, meets this really hot motorcycle guy named Jake, which leads them going back to Eddie's place to hook up. And, of course, they're interrupted by the killer, which leads to a climactic battle where they defeat the killer. It actually looks really good for a limited budget film because it takes place in an apartment and then onto a landscape. And at one point, one guy is handcuffed and knocked off of the fire escape and is kind of dangling, and it looks really impressive for what I'm sure is a very, very minuscule budget. And then they defeat the killer, they kill him. He's being rolled into a stretcher, and then they're like, oh wait, he's still alive, and his eyes open, and then it's sort of a setup for a sequel that unfortunately never happens. But in terms of like really cool horror iconography, there's a great moment where the killer, he uses like a sickle in order to kill people, and he brings the sickle down on the main character and it hits him right in the eyeball. And that's when we learn that the main character has a glass eye, because it doesn't, like puncture and ooze and all that gross stuff that would happen if you actually knifed somebody in the eyeball. So it was just a really cool moment. Like, you want those kind of iconic kills or even just iconic shots in a horror film. And I thought Hellbent did a great job.
Yeah, like you said, we'll discuss this at a later time on my list. But well, for my number six, this was another one that I kind of inadvertently discovered just doing research. Well, not necessarily inadvertently, because it was actually discussed earlier on episode 10 of my show. I'd kind of forgotten this one was actually related to the topic, but I went with Let the Right One In.
Mm-hmm. Great one.
Yeah. So not only is this, like a just absolutely masterful vampire film, it's, easily one of my top 10 favorites, if not even higher. I'd almost completely forgotten about the fact that Eli presents as non-binary because of what happens in their backstory. And
I forgot that too, to be honest with you.
like I said, it's kind of, it's one of those features that, you're not necessarily a lot of people really remember or pay that much attention to because, for those that don't know, what happened to Eli before they, became vampirized was it's revealed that they were a child opera singer back in Italy. And for those that aren't familiar, a common practice back then was male castration, which
The
ended up,
castrati, yeah.
castrati,
Yeah.
which ends up, rendering their voices much higher, so that way they could, have a longer lasting career, being, singing higher notes and being, a a better performer. But what happened is that Eli gets vampirized shortly afterwards. So he's able to go around the world, being non-binary because, he can go both ways. He's still at a young enough age where, it doesn't necessarily look like, it's a male, it's a female, they're gender fluid in a sense, or non-binary. Again, I'm not in the community. I don't know which term would fit, but I think either one kind of covers covers what's going on. So yeah, it probably would be a higher on my list if it was a more prominent part of the film. But
Hmm.
still, the fact that this is still such a good film, and again, it's a topic that not a lot of people are aware of. Goes on the list for that reason. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little secret. As a member of the queer community, we switch up what's appropriate to say all the time because we just like to make straight people uncomfortable. It's
okay,
that's the full motivation. Is we're
okay,
like we're like, how dare you say non-binary? It's gender fluid now. Oh, if you didn't know that, oh, you're a terrible person. So there you go, there you go. There's an inside
ah.
secret. Yep. And now I'm gonna get kicked out of the queer community. So.
Oh, don't worry, your secret's safe with me.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you. No one's listening, right? It's just between us. Yeah. Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. All right. So let's see. Let me just take my list here. Okay. So we're on number 6, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a short film. And I remember you and I talked, I was like, our short films, fair game. And because I have seen so many amazing queer horror short films that I was like, they never get the attention that features get, but it's just there are so many that are so talented. There's so many amazing filmmakers out there that I really want to shine a little bit of a light on them. So the first one is called Tonight It's You, and it is by ASPD Films, and it was directed by a man named Dominic Haxton, who I've never met, so just full disclosure, I don't know who he is, but uh, anyway, it's a great movie. It's hard to explain too much of it without really giving away the twist, which I don't want to do because I really recommend everybody watch it. It's available for free on YouTube. So if you just go to Tonight It's You uh, horror, you'll probably get it because I think Tonight It's You is also a song by I'm blanking on the name of the band, but a band you would know. Anyway, it has an awesome like bait and switch plot. And you think you're getting one story and then the rug gets pulled out from under you, and it's basically the long and short of it is it's about like this horny guy named CJ who's on some sort of like gay sex app, and he goes to hook up with another guy who lives in a farmhouse. They have sex, which is shot all in like slow motion in just this sort of like deeply unsettling way. So something terrible is going to happen. The other guy's abusive dad shows up with a priest. Uh, I don't want to say anything more because I don't want to spoil it, but it's a really, really great film. And I'll forever remember this movie because I was watching it home alone in my home, and my husband came home as I was watching it, and I didn't hear him come home because I had my headphones in, and it was at the tensest part of the movie, and then he just walks into the room and he's like, "Hey," and I screamed. And I very rarely scream from watching horror movies, but this was a big one. It was a very, very fun, jumpy moment. So I'll always treasure it for that memory alone. But it also like legitimately has a great jump scare at that moment in the movie. So highly recommend Tonight It's You.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not terribly familiar, but I felt for the interest of fairness and general conversation as well as awareness. It's all allowed. So
Cool. Awesome.
yeah. So my number 5. This was one that again, this was kind of relegated to episode 10. It was one that was kind of pointed out to me as being influenced in the culture. I went with 2003's High Tension.
Nice.
So yeah, I had always kind of just thought of it as just like a straightforward slasher, nothing really major, just some girl that goes crazy. But during the conversation, a lot of aspects about the whole idea of obsession, and the entire thing is just like a lust vehicle, because it's her doing this rampage to try to win her over, and win get the affections of this girl that's not interested. And
Hmm.
that was kind of like oh yeah, that that actually does play a factor in it. If a guy did this, you'd look at him as yeah, it was there would be like a whole thing about, if a guy did this for another guy, why not if a girl did it for another girl? And it was, like, one of those daha, like coin drop, moments. And it was like, that makes a little bit more sense. And I'm still not entirely fine with the twist. I still have my issues with, what goes on in there, but again, it's one of those, the entire film is set up as a ploy to win the affections of another female. And that kind of speaks for something. That's gotta, register for, a few points on this kind of a list. Again, the film is really good as it is, so I'm a huge fan of it, anyway. But the fact that it plays out as, peacocking, or
Mhm.
kind of showboating, in a sense of like, look at what I'm willing to do for you, like, why don't you love me, kind of a thing. It definitely has a lot of merit for the community. So not necessarily highlighting it on the best of points, but showing that there's, the possibility that it exists everywhere. So yeah, for me, I went with High Tension number 5.
So it's about this guy, um, who is he goes to a sauna essentially to, find sex with other gentlemen, and he just keeps kind of rejecting everyone. And then, as will happen sometimes when you go to a gay sauna, there is a full zombie invasion, and he finds himself, running from zombies. And earlier in the film, he rejects this older man who I believe is of Middle Eastern or Indian descent. And then during the course of the film of the zombie invasion, they ally and they figure out ways to, get away from the zombies and stuff. And it's uh there's actually a really welcome message in there about racism within the gay community, which is a huge problem. And somehow the message doesn't feel forced at all. It just feels like a natural part of the script, which is cool. There's some pretty good scares. The zombie makeup is really good. In the grand tradition of sort of more mainstream horror, there are guys in towels in this huge action sequence, and somehow no towel drops at any moment. All these towels are magically glued to their waists, which is incredible. But it's really fun. It's not too scary, but it certainly is. I would classify it as horror. But yeah, it's great. It's a good romp, I would say, and it's well acted and well written. And I really love the two main actors. I thought those guys were awesome. And yeah, Song of the Dead also available on YouTube for free.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely interested in that one. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to my number 4. This is another one that I actually discovered recently. This was one that I had seen this before we agreed to do this, but I'd seen it just based on a few recommendations from some friends of mine who knew that
Mhm.
I would kind of like the film and that it would be, something right up my alley. I went with 2018's Knife Plus Heart.
Oh, yes. Knife plus heart. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of missed this earlier, and a friend of mine had recommended it to me. Just for those that don't know, I'm a huge fan of giallos and Euro horror in general. So this was kind of a weird one that I missed, just because it was one that it kind of appealed to me. Being a giallo throwback,
Mhm.
and yeah, I fell in love with this. I had so much fun with it. It's a great setup. I love the idea of this company that's just inadvertently, doing these, gay porn films, and they come across this killer that's killing them because they inadvertently filmed this one scene that had been a sort of I'm trying to remember the subtitles here. It was kind of like a
Yeah.
half-hearted recreation of what happened to him.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
one of the scenes they had inadvertently recreated a scene that had affected him, and so he strikes back and starts killing the group one by one. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You have your great giallo scenes. The fantastic lighting, all the usual genre accoutrements. It's just instead of seeing lesbians make love to each other, it's
It-
guys shooting gay sex scenes. So,
Right. And of course, a dildo with a switchblade in it.
oh, that's fantastic. Yeah,
We
that
talk about
open.
horror icons, right?
Yeah,
That's there you go. Yeah.
that fantastic scene in the car outside where he
Yep.
gets the guy who's blowing him. But
Yep.
yeah, the fact that this is just, a straightforward homage, there's very little here that, wouldn't be out of place in, Italy circa 1972.
Right.
Just, you swap everybody out, you swap Edwidge Fenech and, Barbara Boucher out for, these guys. And
Exactly.
yeah, the fact that it's so open and, transgressive about everything, it's completely transparent and letting everybody have their moments. You have some great characters. I have a lot of fun with a couple of the casts that come about.
Mhm.
But yeah, the fact that it's just absolutely just open ended and, lets them have their moments. Nobody really comes off that bad. It's just, they inadvertently film something and, he's out seeking revenge. It's something that, any normal slasher would do. They, came across somebody that had, filmed a movie and had, inadvertently recreated what had happened to them for their movie, sets them off on a rage and, they start killing one by one. I can see that in a normal genre fare, but, doing it in a gay porn community, it's definitely open for, that kind of a movement. So yeah, my number four, Knife Plus Art.
Nice. All right. Well, in the continuing the thread of gay sexuality, my number four is Stranger by the Lake, which is also a French film, because Knife Plus Art is a French film, is it not? It is, right?
There's multiple countries. I think
Oh,
France
okay.
is one of them. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there's like three or four countries, but I can't remember what offhand.
Right.
There's like I said, I think France is the main one because it's got the French name.
Yeah, yeah, right, right, right. So anyway, Stranger by the Lake is a really interesting film. There's not a huge amount of plot to it. It's sort of surprisingly simple for a feature, but it's just like a lonely gay dude named Frank goes looking for goes looking for love, but goes, looking for more physical manifestations of love on a gay nude beach where all the guys kind of hook up in the bushes and stuff. And he sees this one guy who it looks exactly like Tom Selleck from the 80s, and he just falls for him. He thinks he's so hot. Then he sees this guy drown another guy, like forcefully drown him, and then inexplicably behaves for the entire movie like he didn't witness it, even though we see it happen through his eyes. And he kind of pursues the Tom Selleck guy, not in the sense that he's trying to get him arrested, but he's trying to form a relationship with him. They have a lot of sex, which at some points in the movie they swap with body doubles who are having non-simulated sex on screen. So that was something that I didn't know going into the movie. So if that's something that is a deal breaker, just know ahead of time. Anyway, then Frank decides that he's scared of the killer and runs away. Then he comes back to him. The movie ends without us knowing if he gets murdered or not. It's a little perplexing. People call it Hitchcockian. I don't know if I would agree with that, but it's certainly an interesting movie just to kind of talk about. And it's notable probably for the fact that most of the cast is completely naked for most of the film. And and again, there's non-simulated sex. So if you want to watch something like that, but also as a foreign film with subtitles, so you can feel highbrow when watching it, there you go. Your needs are met. But yeah, I mean, I think like it's just one of those movies that's such kind of a. Uh, I'm so surprised it got made, considering all the reasons that you would think it would not get made. It is kind of just a wonderment and sort of just an interesting kind of footnote in queer horror for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I haven't heard of this, so it sounds intriguing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's on Shutter. It was on Shutter at one point. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't spend too much time looking there. I know What Keeps You Around was there,
Mhm.
so I didn't really venture much further. I mean, I didn't have time to be honest, but I'm definitely interested in this. I'll have to
Yeah.
check it down.
Yeah.
So Moving on to my number three. This one was one that it won me over immediately. I saw this early. I got a advanced screener for it through a production company that I work with. 2021's Death Drop Gorgeous.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no end to how much fun this one was. I had a blast with it. So basically, this guy goes to work for a, gay drag commune. I'm not necessarily sure what the term would be, but, you know, it's a gay drag show.
Yeah,
And
like a bar where they have drag shows. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he basically starts realizing that the members of the show are being killed off one by one, and he has to team up with his friend to try to stop the murders while dealing with the unwanted lust from several of the other patrons that haven't been knocked off yet. But yeah, I had so much fun with this. There's so many great fun characters in here. Everybody's really likable. Everybody's really fun. The kills are really fun, really brutal. There's some great gore in here, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those that's just all about being involved in the gay community and giving them a slasher that you swap out a bunch of lesbians for what goes on in here, and it's a straight film. So
It's right. Sure.
yeah, all of
Yeah.
the I really appreciate those kinds of films, and that's one of the things that I kind of get. As I discovered a little bit more in the community, the fact that if all you did was you just swap the genders of what's going on and nothing would change, that to me,
Hmm.
it plays into the community really, really well. So,
Yeah. I agree. And plus it has the glory hole kill where
oh,
the
I'm
guy
always a sucker for glory hole kills.
oh, where the guy sticks his thing in the, what was it, like a meat grinder or something? It was so unsettling to watch. But
Yeah, I think that was the one. Yeah,
yeah,
because
oh, it's so gross. But also all the drag queens, from what I understand, that were in the film are working drag queens.
that
Um,
makes so much sense. Yeah,
yeah.
because a lot of that makeup was just way too good to be, just
Mhm.
run of the mill kind of,
Right.
makeup.
And also the I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a moment where the protagonist is confronting the antagonist. I'm not going to say who it is, and he just goes, the antagonist like has a knife and is killing people, and he just goes, you don't have to do this. You're so young and beautiful." And the villain just goes, "Thank you." Like it's just, my husband and I say that to each other all the time because it's just so fun.
Yeah,
But yeah, that is quite a film for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
and also. Fun fact, I first saw that at the Soho Horror Film Festival, which is a London-based film festival, and they showed it last summer. So I got to see it, I think, pretty early on in its life, way before it
Mm,
got onto Shutter. So yeah, it was cool. I got to see that a while ago. It's a great movie.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely give that one a watch if you missed it last year. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, so my number three, I know we've already touched on this, but it is Fear Street.
Nice.
And again, I did the exact same thing you did. I'm just counting it. I know it's a trilogy, but I just count it as one project. And I mean, you pretty much hit all the notes that I was gonna that I was gonna say, but basically, like, it was fun to see the way that they tied the different genres together because the 90s high school horror one felt very much like a 90s horror film. I thought the ode to 70s summer camp horror felt really spot on. I fully agree with you that the period costume witch-esque 1700s one was the one that I was kind of most excited about, but maybe least
Yeah.
uh I don't want to say least entertained by, but just sort of like,
I find it weird that that's the one everybody says is the best.
oh, do they? Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, it's three ended up just recently it ended up winning the Fangoria Award.
Mm, that is interesting. I would have thought either, I would have probably thought the second one did because,
That was my thing
yeah,
because speaking from personal experience, I was more interested in leaving two going to three than I was from one going to two.
agreed 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, I am a sucker for a summer camp horror film.
Mm.
I love a summer camp horror film. I went to camp as a kid, and so like I remember having these like kind of fantasies about like what would happen if there was a killer or something, because it's like when you're at a summer camp, you are removed from society. Like you can't, you're kind of sequestered away. So it really could become Lord of the Flies very easily. And I used to just love that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so there we go. Oh,
Uh,
also one more thing I'm going to say about Fear Street
yeah.
is it's kind of fun to see the new class of like teen scream cast member actors sort of forming, and like there were a few of the actors in this that I've seen in other horror genre projects. So it's
Mhm.
kind of, I feel like a little bit like we're getting back to that kind of late 90s, early 2000s thing where all of the like the 20 somethings that play teenagers on the WB/CW shows, then they would spend their summers filming horror films. So it's kind of fun to like see a little bit of that energy coming back.
Nice. Yeah. So moving on to my number two, I know a lot, not a lot of people have seen this because every time I bring it up, I bring it up on a couple of these past shows, including episode 10. But I've done it on several others, and nobody's seen it and nobody's heard of it, and it's really underwhelming and it's really kind of depressing because I'll say this: when it came out, it was my film of the year. It was my favorite film for 2019. I went with Bit.
Bit, yes, got it.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
like I said, this was the film that this was my favorite film of 2019. I absolutely loved every second of this. So again, try to be, a little non-spoilery about it, but it involves a teen who moves with her family to I think it's a suburb outside of Los Angeles. I'm not I don't entirely remember where, but I believe it's a small suburb outside of Los Angeles. And she falls in with a pack of female vampires who are attempting to clean the streets of douchebags and, other non-desirables. But it turns out that the vampire master who had infected the first girl that started the clique, he's come back and is looking for revenge. So they have to, deal with him while still dealing with all the other issues. But man, this was just an absolute blast.
Hmm.
But the most important part about this is the fact that the main actress, both in the film and the character that she plays, is a transgender.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, it's an actual transgender playing a transgender character, and the fact that she falls in with this coven of lesbian vampires who are attempting to keep the vampirism out of the hands of men, and using it to sort of keep them at bay and trying not to ensure that there's no men that get their hands on it, and trying to keep the streets clean and trying to keep all the scum douchebag men at bay, trying to just hit on women all the time, or dealing with all that other kind of stuff. Yeah, this was just an absolute blast. I had so much fun with it. And yeah, like I said, this was I like this more than Lighthouse. I like this more than Midsommar, or all those other kind of films. It was this indie vampire film about this transgender person. So yeah,
Yeah.
I know it's available on various streaming platforms. I've seen it on Tubi. I've seen it on Prime. Um, I'm sure that there's a few other places out there if you look for it. But yeah, if you can, give this a watch because I just absolutely love this. I had so much fun with it, and you know, giving a transgender character prominence and priority in the film, yeah, really appropriate, and for this kind of a format, definitely worthy of my list. So
Agreed. Agreed. You love to see it, and it's still so rare that we actually see trans representation in any way, let alone positive trans representation. So for sure. Um, cool. All right. So my number two is another short film, the last short film on the list. So this one is called The Cruise by a filmmaker named Richard Lupersong. A little backstory. My show Demon Hunter was at the Cinema Diverse Film Festival in Palm Springs in 2021, and my show was included in a horror block. So I didn't know any of the other projects or any of the other filmmakers or whatever. I just sort of went in cold. And then one of them was this movie called The Cruise. and it was so well done that as soon as it was finished, I turned to my team. I was like, we have to find out who made this because this was incredible. But anyway, the plot centered around two boyfriends. I think it was on Halloween night. And they visit a park that was famous for guys cruising. And then an urban legend sort of came of the park in that there was like a killer in a werewolf mask who brutally slaughtered a bunch of these men that were, cruising around the park. And there's a lot of laughs. There's some decent scares. This is a weird note, but some of the best fog I've ever seen in an indie film, and I can tell you as a filmmaker, fog is not easy to pull off well. And then it has like a final jump scare where I literally jumped when I was watching it, and all of my team made fun of me for the rest of the day. But it's such a great example of filmmaking and really, really doing something cool. And I hope Richard can make it into a feature because I'm such a fan of his and of the film. So I would say The Cruise. And also, by the way, you can see that as well on Facebook for free. Or not Facebook, sorry, YouTube for free. So if you just type The Cruise gay horror, you'll find it, and it's awesome. Highly recommend.
Nice.
Yeah.
I will actually do you one better, and I will have
Ooh.
all of these links in the show notes down below, as
Oh,
well as.
awesome.
So yeah, I'll do the legwork for you guys. So I'll have
Thank you.
everything with everything there for you to check out.
Cool. Can we throw in the link to the first episode of Demon Hunter?
Well, we'll do that with. I'll have that
Listen,
with the rest of the links. Yeah.
I'm always promoting. I'm always
Yeah.
plugging. That's how we do it. That's how we do it out here.
Well, yeah, that was the thing I was going to say was I'll have all your links in there as well. So
Nice. Thank you.
yeah. So
Alrighty.
all right. So I guess that leaves us with our top choices, but unfortunately, if you've been paying attention, mine's kind of been spoiled. My number one is Hellbent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying earlier that, swapping out characters and just making, everybody, in more traditional formats would, add out that would, change nothing to the story just absolutely appeals to me when you're doing this kind of thing. And that's exactly what Hellbent is to a T. I mean, this is a straightforward traditional slasher film that it just so happens that their characters are gay, and
Yeah.
all of the interactions that take place would just be completely normal, and you wouldn't think twice if it was a straight film with this being men and women together. There's no difference in any of the interactions that take place. All of the hookups would feel normal. It
Hmm.
just so happens that this is a character that the characters are gay, and I see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just the scene against the sickle is just absolutely iconic. I love
Hmm.
that it's the poster art for a reason.
Yep.
But
Oh
yeah,
God, yeah.
yeah.
And
I
that's
mean,
and if people are squeamish about eyeball stuff, then
yeah,
that it gets under your skin.
yeah. I mean, the fact that it occurs in it's a unique place in the film, so it's not necessarily I mean, yeah, it's the like I said, it's the poster art for a reason, but it's not in the most obvious place for it to be, so it's still kind of a surprise when it happens.
Right.
But I mean, the kills are fantastic. The killer's iconic. I love that just devil mask that he wears.
Oh, it's such a cool mask.
It
Yeah.
looks so good on screen, and the early giallo lighting, that kind of plays with a lot of that, disco neon kind of lighting thing,
Hmm.
where it keeps them in the shadows. Yeah, it just looks amazing, and it's just so much fun. Go in like I did. It's just a slasher film. The characters are just gay. That's the only difference with this one against any of the other sleepaway camps or Friday the 13th or any of the other kind of stuff that has popped up in the scene since its creation. Just like I said, it was just one of those films that just stuck with me for a reason, and I had so much fun with it that it started my, I wouldn't necessarily say huge expanse into the genre, but it definitely made me feel like it was a scene worth exploring and something that there was a lot more than the unfortunate David Dakota films that I had seen previously, but
I'm so
yeah,
sorry that you saw those. That can be hard.
yeah, yeah. So like I
Awesome.
said, if you've seen, if you're curious about, willing to see what this stuff has to offer, this is the perfect entry point, and it still holds up to this day. So
For sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, an easy
Cool.
choice for me at number one. So unfortunately, yeah, spoiled a little bit, but it's worth it. So
So,
yeah,
awesome. So my number one is I was really trying to figure out like, okay, what's the movie that I have the most fun rewatching of kind of all of the stuff that we brought out here? And you'd already mentioned it, but I'm gonna go with Jennifer's Body. I just, I mean, it's a cult classic for a reason. I think it's really interesting that it was like almost completely ignored when it first came out. But I think it's cool. I think it's fun. It's slick. It is a throwback to 90s horror, but still felt of the era. Um, I think Amanda Seyfried is amazing. I for everybody who doesn't believe that Megan Fox can act, watch this movie because she actually is a very good performer on screen. And and the third star of the movie is Diablo Cody's dialogue. It's just fun, it's witty, it's quippy. Nobody talks like the characters in her movies, but that's the point. It's just like a little bit of
yeah,
escapist fantasy about how clever and witty every character is. Some people find that grating. I enjoy it.
yeah,
I think we go to movies for a reason. And, this is a movie about a girl who gets murdered in a human sacrifice by a band who is appealing to Satan to give them fame and fortune. So it's like, we're not really dealing in the realm of realistic stuff anyway. So I'm totally okay with characters being way more witty than any high school student has ever been in history. But yeah, I just thought it's a very much firmly set in the 2000s. Maybe it actually, when I watch it now, I get a little nostalgic for that time. So yeah, mine is
yeah.
Jennifer's Body.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I go back and forth on it. There's times where I like it. There's times where it looks weird just because you're seeing Jennifer Lawrence and Amanda Seyfried, who, unfortunately are a little too old to be playing high school teenagers. But
Oh, Megan Fox, not Jennifer Lawrence, but yes,
oh,
yes,
Megan
agreed.
Fox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Jennifer Lawrence probably was old enough to play a high school student in 2008, but yes,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's a little younger. Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah. I think that's kind of, like I said, that was like my thing with it. But other than that, I have a lot of fun with it as well. So it's definitely worthwhile for a reason. So.
yeah. It's a
But
good one.
yeah, before we head out of here, do we have any other honorable mentions to bring out?
I do. My honorable mention, it just came out, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, is The Hunt, which stars Betty Gilpin and Hilary Swank. Now, it is not overtly a queer movie at all, but there is a level of camp that I feel is so gay when you watch it. And it's like the whole movie leads up to this incredible catfight between Betty Gilpin and Hilary Swank. And I mean, brutal, but also funny. And like the pre fight banter is a camp classic. Hilary Swank has this monologue about making grilled cheese, which it should be studied in schools teaching acting. It's so good. And there's also like there's no male love interest for either one of them, so there's a little bit of lesbian energy when they come together. It's so again, like this might be me totally reading something that doesn't exist in the movie into it, but I'm gonna say my honorable mention is The Hunt, and it's on HBO Max, I think, so people can find it. It's great.
Nice, yeah. I had a lot of fun with that part as well. It was my favorite
Yeah.
scene in the film. So
Mm,
yeah,
so
I
good.
yeah, it was really fun. Yeah,
Yeah, so good.
yeah. So like I said, the one that I'll bring up, in similar vein to Hellbent, an early slasher from the early 2000s called Make a Wish, which was a
Ooh.
lesbian slasher film. All females, no men, but I don't really remember a whole lot about it, and it's kind of disappeared into obscurity for a reason. But just in the sense of trying to establish more inclusivity and more trying to make a little more level and balanced playing field. Still worth a mention, but wish I could say more about it just because it's been a while since I've seen it. But yeah,
Cool.
yeah, I guess we'll end it there. So
Awesome.
yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me on. This is so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, before we go, do you have any place we can find you and your work online?
Yes. So if you go to demonhunter.com, which is spelled demonhuntr.com, so there's no final E at the end of that, that'll bring you to a website that's all about my show. It's a queer horror action comedy martial arts Greek myth extravaganza. There's just it's as gay as you get and as silly as you get. Our biggest influences were Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Evil Dead. So if that's something that appeals to you, please check us out. Our first episode is available for free on our website, so you can just go there and check it out. And if you like it, the whole series is available for purchase on Amazon Prime and iTunes and Google Play and Roku and all that fun video on demand stuff where you can find stuff. So that's where we are.
Nice. Yeah. I will, like I said, in addition to all of the shorts mentioned during the show, I will have everything linked down below for you all to check out in the show notes down below. So
Awesome.
yeah, I really appreciate it. And this sounds like a fine welcoming for the month.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. This was so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this definitely felt like a worthy celebration to kick things off. So, for those of you that are listening, thank you for enjoying the show, and we will see you next week with a new topic. So, until then.
Bye.